Hello Year 9 and welcome to today's lesson on photosynthesis. I want you to write down the date, the title and the LO, and I want you to do the starter task please. So pause the video here and I'll continue in 5 seconds. Okay, so answer to Dave's tweet. So he said, how does water get into your cells and what would happen if too much water got into a cell? So water moves by osmosis down a concentration gradient. So it goes from an area of a high amount of water to a low amount of water. So if you've got less water in your cells than on the outside of your cells, then the water will move into it. And it moves through the partially permeable membrane. Now, in an animal cell, if there is too much water, it will explode, okay? It will burst. A plant cell, if there's too much water, it's got a cell wall around the outside that stops it from bursting. Okay, so plants really want lots of water because that helps them keep their rigid shape to stand upright. So if you had anything along those lines, then mark it as correct, please. Okay, photosynthesis. So plants, unlike animals, can make their own food. They do this using a process called photosynthesis. And then underneath that, we have the actual dictionary definition of photosynthesis. So the process by which green plants, now that green is important and we'll come onto that later. So the process by which green plants and some other organisms use sunlight to synthesize nutrients from carbon dioxide and water. So I want you to write down the definition for photosynthesis, please, but you can put it into your own words. So you might just want to put green plants make nutrients from carbon dioxide and water. So now we're going to talk about the reactants for photosynthesis. So first of all, photosynthesis takes place in the leaves of the plant. So we are looking at the leaves. This is where photosynthesis takes place. So water travels up from the roots to the leaves. So water is a reactant for photosynthesis, and the way that the plant gets it is that the water is moves into the roots by osmosis, and then moves up the stem to the leaves. The other reactant is carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide enters the leaves through small holes called stomata. So on the underneath of leaves, there are actually lots and lots of small holes that can open and close, and that is how carbon dioxide gets in. So I want you to pause the video and write about the reactants of photosynthesis, please. You can draw pictures to help you too. Okay, the products of photosynthesis. So this is what is made by the reaction of photosynthesis. So glucose is made, and it's used for respiration in the plants. So in year 8, we learnt about respiration, and that happens in humans, but it also happens in plants too, okay? It happens in anything that is living. So glucose is used for respiration in the plant. It's also used for other things, but we will come on to that in a later lesson. And the second product is oxygen. So oxygen is used for respiration in the plant again, and it is given out into the environment. So you all know by now that trees and plants and stuff produce oxygen for us. If there aren't enough trees on the earth, then the oxygen levels will go down. Okay, that's why it's really important now that we learn about deforestation and things like that and why it's bad. Okay, so we want as many trees on the earth as possible to give out oxygen for us. So I want you to do the same as you did with the reactants, please. So pause the video and write about the products of photosynthesis. Right, other important factors. So another important factor that you need for photosynthesis is chlorophyll. So chlorophyll is a green pigment where the reaction takes place. So it only happens in the green parts of the plant. You might have seen some leaves in your garden where they're all white around the outside and only green in the middle. photosynthesis only takes place in the green part, not in the white parts. Okay, chlorophyll is in chloroplasts. You might remember that from when we did our cell topic. So plant cells have chloroplasts. They contain chlorophyll, which makes the plant green, and that is where photosynthesis takes place. Another important factor is sunlight. So sunlight is the thing that provides the energy for the reaction. So photosynthesis only happens in the daytime because it needs sunlight to do it. So again, pause the video and write down these important bits of information. Now we're going to write out the actual reaction. So we've learned what the products are, we've learned what the reactants are, we've learned where they come from and where they go. Now we're going to put it into a formula. So the formula is carbon dioxide plus water goes to glucose plus oxygen. And then above the arrow, we write light or sunlight because that is needed for the reaction. So I want you to write this down, please. It's really important and you need to know this off by heart. Now, sometimes people get confused about which way around it is. They can remember all 4 things that are involved, but they don't remember which ones are reactants and which ones are products. So there is a way to remember this, and I'll put it on the screen now. Okay, so you take the first letter of each word and we can make it into a sentence. Can we go outside is how I remember it. So plants are outside. So if you think, can we go outside? Carbon dioxide, can. Water, we. Glucose, go. Oxygen, outside. Okay, so you just take the first letter of each of those of each of the words in that sentence, and that is how I remember the order of the equation. Okay, so can we go outside is how I remember it, and plants are outside, plants photosynthesize. Right, you also need to know the symbol equation for this. So some of these you might know already, so you'll be familiar that H2O is water. You might be familiar with CO2 being carbon dioxide, and you might be familiar with O2 being oxygen. I know a lot of my students this year have been very familiar with O2 because of Among Us. Some people can sabotage the O2. If that's how you remember it, that's absolutely fine, okay? O2 is oxygen. Remember any of this any way that you want. Okay, glucose, unfortunately, is a bit more complicated and I don't have a fancy way of remembering it. So you're just going to have to keep on writing it over and over again until you remember it. It's C6H12O6. Okay, so that is the formula for glucose and you need to know it. Right, so I want you to write down that symbol equation, please. Okay, the only problem with this equation is that it's not balanced. So if you remember, matter can't be created or destroyed. It can't just disappear and it can't just be made out of thin air. Now, if you look on this side, we have 1 carbon. If we look on this side, we have 6 carbons. So remember, if there is a little number after the letter, that means that there is 6 of that element. Here we have 12 after hydrogen, so it means there's 12 hydrogen and there's 6 oxygen. So we've got 1 carbon this side, 6 carbons this side. We've got 2 hydrogens this side, 12 hydrogens this side. We've got 1, 2, 3 oxygens this side, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 oxygens the other side. Okay, so we can see that it's not balanced. Now, this luckily is a bit easy to balance. You just put a 6 in front of everything other than glucose. So 6, 6, 6, and now it's balanced. And we'll just use the carbon as an example. So now we've got a 6 before it. That means that there is 6 of this whole compound. That means we've got 6 carbons on the left and we've got 6 carbons on the right. Okay, so this is how you balance this equation. You just put a 6 in front of everything other than glucose. And you can remember this as the devil's equation. Okay, so 666 is the devil's number. You need 3 6s to balance it. Okay, so it's a bit much to get your head around. We're going to keep on practicing it, but you do need to know everything on this page. You need to know the word equation, the symbol equation, and how to balance the symbol equation. So please make sure you make notes on it. Okay, and now there's some questions for you to do at the end. So I want you to pause the video and I will give you the answers in 5 seconds. Right, question number 1. 3 identical plants were grown for a week. They were treated in the same way except received different amounts of sunlight per day as shown in the table. Which plant do you think would have produced the most glucose? Explain your answer. So plant C would have produced the most glucose because it had the most hours of sunlight, and you need sunlight for photosynthesis to take place, and the product of photosynthesis is glucose. Therefore, the plant that had the most sunlight will make the most glucose. Number 2, a scientist studied 3 types of cell under the microscope. She recorded the average number of chloroplasts she found in each type of cell. Suggest what type of cell will have the highest rate of photosynthesis. Explain your answer. Okay, plant cell number 3 had 10 chloroplasts. So chlorophyll is needed for the reaction to take place. Chlorophyll is contained within chloroplasts. Therefore, the one with the most chloroplasts will have the most chlorophyll and therefore will photosynthesize the most. Okay, so correct or tick your answers, please. And that is the end of today's lesson. I hope you all have a wonderful day.